What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Yo, what is going on? Welcome back. Welcome in. Week 12 DFS cashing points with my guys, Jake Tribbey and Hilo. Back with fun 10-game slate. Fun-ish 10-game slate. We were just talking behind the scenes. Wish the Monday and Sunday night games were on the slate. But hey, fun 10-gamer. We're going to try to win some tournaments this weekend, as we always do here. Guys, let's get right into it here. I would ask how you're doing. I know you're doing well. Excited to talk football. Let's hop in. We'll get started here with Bucks and Giants. Bucks going on the road. 6-point favorites. Totals 41.5. Jake, I'll toss to you first, man. We were having the debate this morning about what kind of role to expect from Mike Evans. Let's get started with this Bucks side. Obviously, Baker is playing an exceptionally high level, but I think the big question here is just how big of a role can we expect for Mike Evans? I saw something from an ESPN beat writer this morning, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name. But basically, Evans had two separate hamstring injuries. Like, he had one pull in one area and another pull in another. He's 31. I don't know. It's an amazing spot. What type of role do you see for Evans, and how do you see this Giants offense changing moving forward with Tommy Cutlets? We'll go with there.
Yeah. I mean, this is a tough sort of situation to parse out with Evans. For what it's worth, even in his games with Chris Godwin, he still crossed 23 fantasy points in half of those contests. Cade Otton has a terrible schedule-adjusted matchup. The matchup for Evans is awesome, and he's been one of the most productive players this season in terms of fantasy points per target. The only concern is that he's still limited in some capacity here. I sort of lean toward him being fully healthy in this spot, if only because they're fresh out of the bye, and why would you play your veteran 31-year-old wide receiver if he wasn't, if he was still at risk of a re-aggravation or anything like that? So I'm sort of leaning toward a full workload for Evans, and if that's the case, I mean, he's just massively under-owned here. Even if there is a risk he's limited, I still think the upside is certainly worth taking advantage of in this spot. Hilo, I'm curious if you see the Mike Evans situation any differently than that.
Yeah, dude, there's three truths about some of the elite wide receivers on the slate. Like, the first is Mike Evans against single high. Why is that important? Because he's playing an opponent that is in single high over 62% of the time. The other two, we're going to talk about them, but it's Amon-Ra St. Brown against cover 3 and Tyreek Hill against man. Those three guys are all in their natural splits where they have dominated for years and years and years. So I don't care. I'm not going to sit here and try and predict what's going to happen with Mike Evans. I'm just saying he's in an elite spot and he's coming in sub 5%. I'm just going to play him, especially in GPPs. I just want to. And then you kind of layer in the fact that we expect the field to be spending their salary this week at running back. CMC's on the slate. We have people are going to be playing Devon Achane. All that kind of comes together. We're seeing a large chunk of ownership at wide receiver settle in the mid-range at wide receiver. So I just want to pay up as much as I can. And those three guys are the primary guys that I want to do it with. I love Mike Evans this week, man.
Not to pour cold water out of the gates on, and starting the show in a bad vibe, but I'm a little lower on Evans, you guys. I guess I could see it being one of those types of situations where they play him on big third downs, play him in the red zone. But some of the coach speak has been not exactly bullish as of late on Evans. Hilo, I'll toss to you, man. What do you think of this offense with Tommy Cutlets in there? And he's 4K on DK. I don't know if he's really in play on FanDuel, but he's stone min on DK. Can we get to some Cutlets this week?
I would like to say that the offense can't get much worse, but I think that it can, honestly. Daniel Jones is not obviously it. He was released earlier today per his request, so his future in New York is done. But Tommy Cutlets, he's a quarterback that is not great at anything. His processing is below average. His pocket presence is below average. Yeah, he has the ability to escape, but he's not a mobile quarterback. He has the ability to escape pressure. So while all of that to say, I guess, is I don't have a lot of high expectations for this offense moving forward. This is very clearly a lost year. They're kind of scrapping everything and full on evaluation mode from here on out. So I just don't know if I can expect anything really from Tommy Cutlets here. I will say, I'll caveat that with, there is not a lot of value outside of that mid-range of wide receiver that's going to project well on the slate. So if you're playing Tommy Cutlets, do so to play the high-priced wide receivers. It gives you a path that is going to be different than the field. Don't play Tommy Cutlets and then jam in CMC and Devon Achane, because if the field is going to Tommy Cutlets, that's what they're doing. So it's just a very clear blueprint where, like, okay, Darius Slayton is back. He has high per target upside. You can maybe play that with Tommy Cutlets. You can maybe play Tyrone Tracy with Tommy Cutlets. You can maybe play Malik Neighbors. None of those guys jump off the page here in this spot. So if you're playing him, just do so in different ways that the field is doing.
I think he's cash viable, Jake. Obviously, like Hilo is lining up there, not super high upside, but 15.3 DK points per start last year. Certainly good enough at his price. What do you think, man?
I don't know if I'd quite be able to get there in cash. I mean, the price is right, and he's popping as a really strong value. I think I'd rather roll with a guy like Geno Smith, depending on how the rest of cash builds sort of shake out this week. But yeah, I mean, he's a solid value, so it's hard to poke holes in that element of it. But I mostly line up with what Hilo said on Tommy DeVito.
Y'all have any interest in Tyrone Tracy? Probably sub 5%, 6K.
Yes,
he's in play. Hilo, what's your case?
I think he's in play. With that same discussion where we expect the field to be paying up at running back, highly, highly unlikely to see 2 pay down at running back rosters in play in GPPs this week, because that effectively means you're bypassing Christian McCaffrey, you're bypassing Devon Achane, you're bypassing some of these other guys that are priced up there. So that kind of makes me more interested in Tyrone Tracy, with the caveat that he is also paired with another sub 7K running back. We have options potentially. Kareem Hunt is a potential option down there. There are other guys that you can pair him with, where if you're saving salary at running back, that effectively means that you're spending it somewhere else. So again, just trying to flip the script a little bit, because the field is expressing a high degree of certainty where they want to spend their salary this week. And that immediately just makes me like, hey, can I flip the script at all? And I think that's one way to do it.
Yeah, I think eating chalk in general has been sharp at running back this season, but I'm with you this week, and I do like Hunt's going to be super mega chalk this week, like 40%.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can get a little different with Tracy. 6K is definitely a good price tag for him. Before we get out of here on this game, Malik Neighbors popped up today with a groin injury, did not practice. He can obviously play through. Yeah, he can play through the injury, man. I think he had a groin issue earlier in the year he played through, but definitely not great to go DNP on Friday. If he's out, I'd be pretty interested in Darius Slayton at 4,600, even with Tommy DeVito. I don't think it's a huge drop off from DeVito to Jones. The only big thing I saw last year, I mean, DeVito just took so many freaking sacks. Like, yeah, he's pretty mobile, but way, way too many sacks last year. All right, we'll keep it moving here. Lions and Colts, game of the week, 50.5 total. Lions are 7.5-point favorites in Indy. Hilo, I'll toss it to you first. You've been lining up with Amon-Ra in this spot. Obviously, Colts are super zone heavy. I was looking before the show. In the 7 games they've had Amon-Ra, Williams, Laporta, Amon-Ra's first read target share against zone coverage is 37%. Pretty strong. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they play a lot of cover 3. He's killed cover 3 in his career. I love this call on Amon-Ra here.
Yeah, and you set it up well, because this is the game of the week, but I don't think that the field is kind of viewing it that way. They're kind of viewing it as it's like the Lions we expect to succeed, but I don't know if the field is thinking that the Colts can return punches here. What is most important about that is their offense looked extremely different last week. And to me, this is a situation where, Shane Steichen coming out of off season and into the regular season, to me, they were trying to develop Anthony Richardson's pocket passing presence. His scramble rate when pressured was way down, 7.5% over those first 4 starts. There was just a lot of indicators where they were trying to create the next Lamar Jackson, the next Jalen Hurts. You need to have that pocket presence and that passing upside to be one of those guys. If they were able to develop him into that, they know that they're set for the next 10 years. They were not able to yet. And now, to me, Shane Steichen came out in week 11 and he's like, okay, I'm going to build an offense around what Anthony Richardson is good at. So we saw increased rates of run pass option. We saw increased rates of play action. And all of that is built to maximize the upside of Anthony Richardson. So to me, the Colts can keep pace here. Not necessarily saying like they have a chance of winning the game, but like they can put some pressure on Detroit here based off of what they looked like last week. And if that upside carries forward, I think it's a great idea to gain access to the offense of Detroit. Pick your favorite player. It's really hard to go to the backfield. So to me, again, you mentioned we've both talked about how Amon-Ra is in a great spot. I love Amon-Ra, but I love getting access to the entirety of the Detroit offense through Anthony Richardson. You can pair him with Josh Downs. You can pair him with Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce's role has not changed. We know who he is. He's the deep guy, and Anthony Richardson can throw the football over that mountain. So, like, it's a solid spot for both of those guys. I'm not going to Michael Pittman. He's dead to me forever. But, like, those two guys, like, pair them both with Anthony Richardson. Pick your favorite. Alec Pierce's price has come down to a more palatable range. So I really like this game, and I like accessing it through the Colts and then getting access to Amon-Ra.
I love that call, high-low, in part because I think AR's ownership is going to be pretty heavy here. 15 to 20% is generally what I'm seeing across the industry. You mix in a Downs or a Pierce, and that ownership just doesn't matter anymore. You're totally off the chalk build with something like that. So I really like that call. I also wanted to note Jameson Williams in the spot. Colts have allowed the third most deep receiving yards per game. So, this could be an interesting week to get a little bit of JMO exposure. But yeah, totally agree on the Amon-Ra call. And I think if you're going heavy on AR, building a ton of AR lineups, you probably want some backfield exposure. It's just really tough to figure out what to do with those guys.
Yeah, I'm all in on Josh Downs this week, by the way. I mean, we just saw the timing anticipation from Ant last week. He's only 6,200.
I got one for you.
This is an amazing spot. Yeah.
I got a great stat to probably boost that up. Josh Downs with Anthony Richardson under center against man coverage, which is important because the Lions lead the league in man coverage. His ADOT jumps to 14.6 this season. Ooh. Yeah. So
slot receiver, that's bananas. Yeah.
That is bananas, right? So that is at least notable here. And I would view Josh Downs a little bit differently than just like your standard slot guy in this spot.
Nice. Love that poll. It's a great stat. It makes me feel even better. I just gave out Josh Downs overs in Discord about an hour ago. I think he's going to be contrarian too. I think people are going to want to play JSN. They'll want to play DK. They'll want to go down. I think play some Sutton and some Ridley. Not so much Juwan Jennings anymore. So I think Downs is going to be maybe 5 or 6%. Beyond that, man, I know it's tough to play these Lions guys, right? But like, it is a great spot, Jake. These Lions running backs, that is. Gibbs 7,300. Montgomery's come up again, 6,700. Any interest? I think these guys are going to be sub 10% again.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could argue for it just based on game environment. If this game shoots out, I mean, chances are one of these running backs gets you a decent score here, but it is just really tough. Gibbs has obviously been way more efficient. Inside the 10 work has still been leaning toward Montgomery. Like I said, I mean, it is just really tough to know who to trust. I think my favorite way to play it is just AR, pick a Amon-Ra, Jameson. You could even go Laporta, and then, mix in your Pierce, your Downs exposure there. I think that's a pretty unique way to play, by far the best offensive environment on the slate right now, according to Vegas.
Yeah, really good. Also, Colts picked up their pace last week too. I mean, they've just been really slow, and Ant starts really picked it up last week. JT's not in play, 7,100. Ant's, potentially taking the goal line stuff. I think we covered this game pretty well here. We'll go to Titans and Texans. Texans 7.5 point favorites. Total is 40.5 in Houston. Man, Jake, I'll throw it to you. Like McCaffrey at 8,500 versus Joe Mixon at 8K, I think is a legitimate debate now that Purdy's out. I don't think it was 3-4 hours ago when we knew, thought maybe Purdy was in. It's a tough spot. Titans are obviously pretty good on the ground, but Mixon is just getting there every week. What's your read here on this game and specifically on Mixon?
Yeah, I mean, I think, pretty simply put, Mixon is a great play. League best 25.5 DraftKings fantasy points per game on a league best 21.1 expected fantasy points per game in his 7 full games this season. Yeah, I think maybe you could argue they go a bit more pass heavy with Nico Collins back, which I believe we've seen, sort of play out in the pass rate over expectation data. Nico is another guy, these 7K wide receivers, high-low. I know you sort of mentioned getting exposure to more of these expensive wide receivers. There are a lot of guys in this, from Mike Evans up to Amon-Ra, who I have a lot of interest in that just aren't going to garner much ownership. And I think Nico Collins is one of them. We saw him on a limited route share last week. I would expect him to be sort of fully back this week. I don't know if I have any favorable schematic notes. It's a neutral on paper matchup, but I mean, we know what this guy's capable of. He was playing like the best receiver in the NFL in the first 4 weeks of the season. And, I really wouldn't be shocked if he returned to it here against Tennessee.
Yeah, big uptick in route share should be coming here. 47% last week. I think he gets back to probably closer to 80%. Titans secondary is beat up. They haven't had L'Jarius Sneed in like 5 weeks. He's on IR, but Roger McCreary is also beat up. Their slot corner. He's got a knee injury. Yeah, I looked into this. I think Texans were 4th or 5th in pass rate over expectation in Collins' 6 starts. I've had zero interest in Stroud all year, but he is 6,500 now. I mean, it's not a good price. He should be like 58, 57 near Geno at this point. But this is the first week I've like been a little interested in Collins and Stroud. Hilo, I'll ask you: is Will Levis in play? He's 4,900. It's a decent spot, but now you're shaking.
It is a decent spot. He is in play just because the state of this slate, there are no quarterbacks on it that have like 40-point upside. So if that's the case, one of these guys down here, and we just got done talking about Tommy Cutlets, one of these guys down here putting up 24 to 26 fantasy points is probably going to be meaningful on this slate. He's not my preferred option, but we should be thinking about the framework of the slate through that that kind of thought process. So I won't just completely shake my head. I'm not going there, but I will not argue against it.
Yeah, I have PTSD from week 5.
We remember.
Yeah, we'll never forget that. But man, I'm trying to get past my bias because Ridley's a good price at 5,700.
Yeah,
not a great schematic matchup for him, but these guys are cheap and we're looking for some value. We'll also have Brandon Allen. We'll talk through that in the Niners-Packers game at 4K. Yeah, it's a pretty gross week at quarterback, honestly. Yeah. It really is. And that's why I'm bringing up Levis, just because I think he's moderately in play, but not someone I'm super stoked on. I am a little bit stoked to play Tony Pollard, though, at 5,800. I don't think anybody's really on this. Tyjae Spears is out. It's not a good matchup at all, but he's going to be full-on bell cow. 82% snap rate in the games that Tyjae Spears has been out this season. It's a very strong technical value for Pollard. I don't know how much upside he has just because Texans are very good against the run, but I will say I'm into Pollard this week again. Jake, you got anything else on this game? Any other notes on Ridley? I feel like 5,700 is too cheap for him for what he's been.
Yeah, it's definitely too cheap. I mean, especially with the way he's been playing lately. He had a 51-yard touchdown catch nullified by penalty last week. If that had counted, he'd be averaging almost 10 targets per game, over 100 receiving yards per game, 17.8 expected fantasy points per game, almost 21 actual fantasy points per game over his last 4. It's a top 10 on paper matchup against the Texans. He's projecting as a top 3 value for us last I checked. Just massive volatility with Levis under center. So I would keep that in mind. There's 30-point upside and there is 4, 5, 6 fantasy point downside.
Yeah, well, all of us here like to party, and I don't think any of us are afraid to party. And Ridley is definitely that kind of guy. 19-yard ADOT with Will Levis over the last 2 weeks, which is a lot of fun. Just nothing but YOLO balls. This is kind of a fun game, and I think ownership is a little low on maybe the upside of this game that could provide. All right, we'll keep it going here. Patriots and Dolphins. Hilo, you and I love Drake May this summer. I'm into Drake May this week, 5,500. Fun game, 46.5 total. Dolphins are 7.5-point favorites. This game has shootout potential for sure. Obviously, we haven't seen Tyreek have the massive game since week 1, basically. We haven't seen Achane rip off really any big plays except for last week's 30-yarder. We still think this Dolphins team can push pace, though. Hilo, what's your thoughts on this game? Walk me through it. And, are we just eating Achane chalk again here?
Yeah, so on paper, Achane is, again, one of the most fundamentally underpriced players on the slate. That again does not mean that you have to play him, but we have to have that understanding. Now that we have layered on all this ownership to Achane over the last month or so of play, and it's justified. He's not only like performing as a wide receiver 1 on pass volume alone. Now he's up to like 18 carries per game instead of like the 10 to 12 that we were looking at, 4 or 5 weeks ago. That is significant volume. That said, any player that's going to be 30+% owned, I'm always thinking, is there a way that he fails? Since they're playing the Patriots and it's not likely that this offense fails, the likeliest path for Achane failing at that price and ownership is for somebody else on his team to be scoring touchdowns. Look at last week, Jonas Smith grabbed 2 of the touchdowns. Now that we have Tyreek Hill against a defense that is playing man coverage at a top 4 rate, it really, really piques my interest, Tyreek Hill here against man coverage, against a team that is bleeding production to perimeter wide receivers. I mean, if Tyreek Hill goes for an 80-yard touchdown, that's 4 or 5 touches or opportunities that are immediately taken away from Achane, just on that drive alone, what we could have expected from that. So I really like Tyreek Hill here. He's in that like bucket of price range where we're not expecting a ton of ownership. I really like playing Tyreek with like another or even 2 more of these pay up options at wide receiver.
I like Tyreek a lot. I've been waiting basically all year, last 5 weeks since Tua came back to play Tyreek because Achane has been cheaper. He's had more upside. Now the prices have finally flipped and it's a perfect matchup on paper, like you mentioned. And Tyreek's fully healthy. Full practice today, full practice yesterday. Limited practice today. He was full practice yesterday, so should be healthier. I really like Tyreek at 7,200. Jake, help me out with this Patriots side. Obviously, May is pretty decently in play. I think A-Rich has way more upside. Geno probably projects a little bit better, but May is definitely in play at 5,500. Who are you stacking him with? We're seeing some ownership on Hunter Henry. I think we got to have the discussion about these cheap receivers between Boutte and Bourne. Kendrick Bourne's role should be coming up this week. How do you see it this week?
Yeah, first, I just wanted to echo what you guys said on Tyreek Hill. I think he's right there as my favorite wide receiver play on the slate. Nice. New England also allowing the 6th most receiving yards per game on deep throws. Scored over 30 DraftKings points in almost 1/3 of his games with Tua under center. There's just no way he should be, what's he projecting for, around 10% ownership? Yeah, I'm seeing 8 to 10. That's really nice for a guy with Tyreek Hill's upside. On the New England side, I think I like Drake May a bit more than you do, Graham. I certainly wouldn't argue that he, should be a better on paper play than Geno. I would agree AR offers more upside. Drake May's price is the QB14 on this slate, QB8 by DraftKings fantasy points per game. He averages 4.9 fantasy points per quarter, which would translate to 19.7 fantasy points per game. That would rank 3rd among slate eligible quarterbacks. It is a bottom 5 schedule adjusted matchup, but I still think he's fundamentally underpriced. Stacking him is a little bit trickier. Thankfully, we have plenty of leeway here because it doesn't take much salary to stack up Drake May. I think Hunter Henry is pretty clearly my favorite option. Miami is a top 6 tight end funnel. They just got destroyed by Brock Bowers. Henry's hit 19.5% target share in 4 of his last 5 games. He projects as a relatively solid value. I think after that, that's when things get a little bit trickier to decipher. Kendrick Bourne led all New England pass catchers in fantasy points after his week 10 wake-up call where he played 0 snaps. I think he's an intriguing contrarian option. I know Hilo had a great shout on that last week. We could certainly see the routes come up. He was only around a 50% route share in week 11. I wouldn't be surprised to see the routes come up further this week because he was closer to a 75% route share before that, 0 snap game in week 10. So I think Bourne would be up there for me. Kayshon Boutte is projecting for 10-15% ownership across the board. And that really does not make much sense to me. I get it in the sense that he's led the team in route share and expected fantasy points per game over the last month, at least, led the pass catchers. It just hasn't translated into any actual fantasy points. And, like I said, he's going to be somewhat popular. So I think I'd rather go to Henry. I'd rather go to Bourne. You could always argue for Pop Douglas, but I just don't see much of a ceiling there. So I think Henry and Bourne would be my favorite options with May.
Yeah, DeMario's 500, right? 500, 400 more expensive than Henry, and Henry's beating him by XFP. So definitely with you there. I like the Bourne call. 70% route share in, I think it was week 8 or week 9. And then he was 70% again. And then he got doghoused, played well last week. Kayshon Boutte just strikes me as like the Romeo Dobbs of this offense. And maybe I misspoke. I do love Drake May. A-Rich projects significantly better. I think Gino projects a little better, but I'm into May, and I don't know if you have to stack him with one of these guys. Like, I kind of like the idea of playing May with Achane and Tyreek, and that's it. Just say, hey, I'm taking the whole Miami offense here. I'll take all that upside, and May just, he's the bring back basically. I think that'll cover it for this game. Real quick, actually, you guys have any interest in Ramondre?
Yes.
5,900. Yeah, he kind of stands out too. I think Tracy, Ramondre, and Pollard all project well, and they're like not catching any ownership. Now, I get why. Kareem Hunt's 5,700, but
I'm curious how you would tier those guys high-low, but I think Ramondre would pretty clearly be my favorite of the three. The volume has just been so damn good, and obviously New England can finally move the ball with May under center. But yeah, I'm curious what you think.
So the way to look at these guys that are all kind of in the same tier, the general tendency, and this is just human psychology, the general tendency is to want to rank them and to want to, like, I have to play this guy in this group of 4 players. When we're constructing rosters, we're telling a story. We're telling a story of how a game plays out, how like where a guy's opportunities come from, how a team scores touchdowns, and then how the slate comes together as a whole. And I like to do that from like a top-down approach. When we get to this game, and when we're talking about, okay, we like Drake May, okay, we like Hunter Henry, what you're saying by saying you like those guys is the New England offense is going to find some level of success. And in games where New England offense has found some level of success, they have not been blown out, Ramondre is averaging 21.5 opportunities per game. So not only is the field already not utilizing running backs in primary stacks enough, but they're not like telling the story. So like, we don't have to say like, I think Ramondre is going to outscore Kareem Hunt this week. We have to say like, on rosters where I'm saying I'm already betting on New England having offensive success, I already know that Ramondre is averaging 21.5 opportunities per game in those games. So you get 3 positions right. If you just say like, okay, we like Drake May, we like Hunter Henry, I'll put Ramondre on here too. And it's highly likely that if those other 2 guys are succeeding, Ramondre is seeing 20 to 22 opportunities. And now at his price, like it doesn't matter. You don't have to make the bet of saying like, I'm just going to hit a 9-leg parlay and get all the guys right that are going to score the most points. No, you reduce the variables. So that's how like roster construction and reading a slate is so much more important than just saying like, how do you rank these guys, in my opinion? And that's just like from a theoretical stance and like when we actually get into the nuts and bolts of building a roster. So I like Ramondre. I like Kareem Hunt. I like Tyrone Tracy. How you play them, I think, matters more than just saying like, this guy's going to outscore this guy.
I like that call. And I think Patriots could straight up beat the Dolphins here. I mean, I get the spread, but I think Drake May is the truth. I think they keep this game close. On that same thread, I think if you just say, hey, like, we've seen blow up games from Tua where he makes some bad decisions, play Ramondre and Patriots defense. Like, no one is going to be on that. I do think Ramondre is in play. I like Tony Pollard a little more than you guys, just because the volume has been so good when Ty J's out. But Ramondre is definitely in play. All right, we'll keep it going here. Cowboys and Commanders. Commanders 10.5-point favorites here against Cooper Rush, even though Jaden Daniels is beat up. 45 is the total. I really like Brian Robinson this week. Just an amazing schematic matchup.
That's another name.
Yeah, he's dude. It's like there's 6-7 guys in that pocket. But I think everybody's kind of on this. We're seeing some pretty decent ownership projections on Robinson. That should probably come down when Hunt projections come up. But hey, really good spot. Great schematic matchup. Cowboys are giving a 61% success rate and 4.9 yards per carry against man blocking schemes, and Washington is primarily man blocking. B-Rob should be healthy. Eckler shouldn't cut in as much because they're not going to get smoked. Really good spot for B-Rob. What's your thoughts on this game, man? And I've seen, we were talking this morning, like the Jaden Daniels projections are a little all over the place in the industry. Like, he is clearly not healthy. How do you see this offense this week?
I mean, even if we assume everybody on this offense is healthy, and we've talked about this prior this season or previously, where it's like they are so unconcentrated that they could score 42 points and nobody could hit home. That said, like Brian Robinson is one of those like yardage and touchdown slightly plus backs where like his archetype, you need 100 yards on the ground to capture that bonus, and you need multiple touchdowns. So with that understanding, in this matchup, even if he's seeing 60% of the offensive opportunities out of the backfield, like he has that still within his range of outcomes. So we cannot discount yet just simply saying like, oh, they haven't done it in the past. Well, this is a spot where he has a path to 100 yards and 2 scores. That said, like, I really don't have any interest in any of the other guys on this offense. I don't have interest in Terry McLaurin. I don't have interest in Jaden Daniels. But on the opposite side, it's a very, very nice, like very, very cheap mini correlation to say like play Brian Robinson and Luke Schoonmaker. Bare minimum price on DK, and he had 6 targets in his first game. He filled in as the primary guy in week 2 on Jake Ferguson's first concussion. Then he saw 10 targets last week. Obviously, that came with like 55 pass attempts, but like we know that he's not going to be the only tight end that plays. Brevin Span Jordan is going to play. That's his name, right? I think he's going to play as well. But like they have so many uncertainties on that offense, man, where it's just like backup quarterback. CeeDee Lamb is banged up with multiple injuries, missed practice Thursday. They were on a short week. So how effective is CeeDee going to be? CeeDee was throwing a hissy fit on the sideline last week. How is his head going to be there? Is Brandon Cooks? I didn't see Brandon Cooks' update. Is he coming off IR this week?
We'll see. I think he was limited practice all week, and that would change the complexion of their offense. Obviously, they would play a lot more 11, way less 2 tight end personnel, but he was limited all week. So
there's just so many uncertainties where it's just like, okay, at bare minimum price, we expect the field to kind of be looking to pay up a little bit at tight end because of all the perceived or projectable value that is at wide receiver in that mid range. So it's like, to me, okay, the field is trying to save salary at this position. Oh, I can look at these other positions: quarterback, tight end, running back, and get my salary savings there. It's just how this week is kind of setting up. So I really like Luke Schoonmaker. I really like Brian Robinson.
Yeah, season high 47% route share last week. He did split with Brevin Spanford. Spanford had 31% of the routes. He's in play. I think people are going to have PTSD from Davis Allen last week too, just getting burned on the 2,500 tight end. So
it's a different spot completely, but
but I'm just psychologically, I could see that happening. Just because we had that 2,500 guy last week. I'm not into Jaden Daniels. I'm not probably going to be playing him. But if I am, I do like Zach Ertz. This feels like a PPR scam Zach Ertz spot. 18% of the targets in 4 of his last 5. Cowboys have gone back to their zone-heavy defense, and Ertz co-leads the team in target share at 21% against zone. He's only seeing 13% of the looks against man. This is a good Ertz spot, and he is not going to draw any ownership. I think people are going to want to play Henry. They're going to want to play Jonnu. Ertz doesn't have a ton of upside, obviously, but decent price if you're playing Jane Daniels. Jake, you got anything else beyond that? Anything else on Dallas? I mean, CD is a decent price, but I don't know if I can play him over Tyreek. The price has come way down, but I'm on Tyreek this week.
Yeah, I'd much rather go Tyreek. I think the only other guy, you guys did a great job covering that game. The only other guy I wanted to shout out was Noah Brown here. It's really tough to save any salary at wide receiver. I think Noah Brown is a somewhat interesting way to do it. I targeted Terry McLaurin 22-19 over the team's last 4 games. He draws the best cornerback matchup in this game. The reverse is true of Terry McLaurin. He's also crushing in per route metrics. He feels kind of due for a blow up game, but like Hilo noted, the volume has just been all over the place in this offense. So Washington could put up a ton of points, and you just won't see any of these wide receivers get there. And I do really like the Ertz call. I think especially if Daniels is still dealing with injury. Last week his ADOT was 3.7, and I think that was largely injury driven. And Ertz is the big beneficiary there when Daniels does go short. I just, the upside with a guy like Ertz who gives you nothing after the catch is a bit tricky. But I think ownership probably makes up for it a bit there.
Yeah, I found a little plus money. Zach Ertz over 3.5 catches. That's probably just the play. I jammed that. Like the Noah Brown shout, Scott had a great tweet this week, basically looking at the receivers who have lost the most production off penalties. And George Pickens was number 1. I think DK Metcalf was number 2, but Noah Brown was number 3. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head or the tweet pulled up. But Scott crushed that. Like that Noah Brown call. Keep it going here. Vikings and Bears. For my money, this game is the grossest on the slate by far. Sam Darnold against Caleb Williams. Darnold has turned into a turnover sack machine. Hilo, Jefferson is 8,100. It's, he can get off in any matchup, but we've seen Darnold start to kind of fall apart here. He's going to see a lot of Jalen Johnson. What's your read here on this game? And before we get started here, Josh Oliver was ruled out, right? It definitely makes TJ Hawkinson. He was? Nice.
Yeah, please.
Makes Hawkinson a little more interesting for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why the field does not like playing the best options at tight end. I've just been jamming the Minnesota Vikings defense for like the last 4 weeks, and they're just like churn out double-digit fantasy points. I don't understand what it is, like what the field's aversion to paying up at defense is. To me, it's like raw points matter so much more than anything else at defense. Like if you're paying $4K for the most fantasy points, that's a win. So the Vikings, their salary came down. They're like 3,400 on DraftKings.
Yeah.
They're kind of around the same price as like the Broncos at like 3,200 on DK. Similar story on FanDuel. They're right around the same price. And for my money, it's just like I want the Vikings. The Bears have shown some inconsistencies along the offensive line. They've vastly underperformed. They have a rookie quarterback who is going to see some stuff. He's going to see a picture that he has not seen up to this point in his professional career this week. It's just they are that good and that dynamic of a defense. So there is the potential for I keep waiting for it. I keep saying like it's coming, but there's potential for like a multi-defensive touchdown game here.
I've been wanting to just jam Broncos defense all week, but if there's another one that stands out, it's definitely Vikings. And I would love to play Aaron Jones with Vikings defense.
Got to wait till the playoffs.
Yeah, I know, man. They're playing Cam Akers more. I thought that might just be the injury against Jacksonville, but it turns out it wasn't. Jones I think he was under 60% of the snaps last week, right, Jake?
Yeah, I believe it was 55.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd love to jam that, but man. Jake, you got anything else on this game? I was talking to you this morning about Odunze. He leads the team in targets against the blitz. He's 4,800, but man, I don't know if I see a whole lot of upside here.
Yeah, that's the tricky part is there really just isn't much upside to the game environment. I think if I had to choose any one-offs here, TJ Hawkinson and Odunze would pretty clearly be my favorites. Odunze leads the team in target share against the blitz. He's a 40% boost to his yards per out run against the blitz. He also posted the highest target share of any Bears wide receiver in any game this year in week 11. Maybe that signals something close to a breakout under a new offensive coordinator. I don't know if I'm buying it though, because we've seen these Bears target shares, for wide receiver just be, hover between 20 and 28% pretty consistently between their top three guys. So we could easily see things sort of just revert back to that. But Odunze has the most juice out of the guys who are left. DJ Moore is going through a mental health crisis or whatever. Keenan Allen's overweight. So it's just kind of where we're at.
It is worth noting too that DJ Moore's ADOT last week was 0.9. Like, what the hell?
Five of his
screen master.
I think 5 of his 8 targets were screens. Yeah. That is the only schematic change. Like Odunze had a 12-yard ADOT, 11-yard ADOT. Pretty sexy.
11.6, I think. Yeah.
Got to get DJ Moore the ball as quick as possible, or else he's just going to walk off the field mid-play.
Oh god. Yeah, he is so sick of it. I don't really blame him.
That's pretty bad when you're sick of it coming from like the Panthers.
Like
where he's come from, like
he has seen some things, that's for sure.
He's seen some shit. He's got non-PTSD.
Poor guy has been like the new Terry McLaurin. Needs to be unlocked again by a better quarterback. Jake, love your Hawkinson call. Oliver is sneaky out. Is sneaky big, him being out is sneaky big. He was cutting in big time last week. Hawks roll fell last week, 51% route share. I was expecting that to get up, but they have no other option now because they're not going to play Johnny Munt.
They really love Oliver as a pass, or as a run blocker. And now that should go to Hawkinson. And Hawkinson was at, about 15 expected fantasy points per game last year. His usage last year was incredible. I don't know if we'll see exactly that in this game, but I mean, like you said, Graham, they just don't have anywhere else to go to at tight end.
Yeah, he'll be out there, full-time route share, that's for sure. Bears have been touched up by tight ends a little bit recently too, so it's a pretty good spot. All right, last game of the 1 p.m. slate here. We're going to get mega chalk on Kareem Hunt. Chiefs are 10.5-point favorites. 43 is the total. Obviously, Chiefs don't have Isaiah Pacheco. Why would they? He broke his leg, 8-9 weeks ago. Like that, dude, they're playing for the Super Bowl. They've got a short week coming up. No surprise Pacheco didn't play. What is a surprise, though, is DraftKings bumped Kareem's price down by 1K. He was 6,700 last week. They're anticipating Pacheco back. Now he's 5,700. Jake, he's going to be 40% owned, right? Like probably pushing 50 to 60% in single entry stuff, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the argument for Hunt is really, really easy. He's averaged 19.6 expected fantasy points per game since week 5. That's, RB2 overall. And he's looking at the single softest schedule adjusted matchup for running backs. Kansas City should dominate in this game, 10.5-point spread. So, they should lean into the ground game. Hunt's the obvious beneficiary. I mean, on paper, he looks like the best running back play of the slate. Hilo, I'm curious if you see any, major holes in the chalk outside of the obvious inefficiency concerns.
No. I mean, even if we want to talk about Isaiah Pacheco when he was healthy, he led the league in expected fantasy points per game when he was healthy.
Yeah.
So this offense has just transitioned to such a heavy emphasis of the run inside the 10-yard line. And that is something that we hadn't seen from Patrick Mahomes teams up until this year. And it's just making their floor and ceiling on a weekly basis. Talking about the running backs, just too hard to pass up, especially when his price is down at 5,700. So, like I've been mentioning this whole time, I really like Kareem Hunt. I really like some of these other backs that are priced down here, and it's just a really, really easy way to still play Kareem Hunt and do it in a way that the field is probably not getting to.
Yeah, love that. I feel really good about the Tracy Hunt thing. I don't know. I keep thinking about that. It feels really good. Man, it's just such a good spot. Kelsey is probably too cheap, Hilo, but as we saw last week, Noah Gray got a little more involved. Chris just had a great one-liner this morning. Our guy Chris Wecht, who runs our projections, he was just like, Chiefs don't give a shit about the regular season. And there's just some truth in that. They really don't care.
Sure.
Will they care enough? Here's my question. Will they care enough to give Kelsey the ball? Because this is such a good spot.
I think, honestly, the way that they started when Rashee Rice was healthy and even in what we saw out of them in camp when they were expecting to have Hollywood Brown, I think they just don't want to push. They don't want Travis Kelce seeing 10 targets per game.
Yeah, they really don't. Yeah. They
don't want that. And if they can win without doing that, I think they want to go that path. Last week, I don't know if it was coincidence or if there's signal here, but last week, Juju Smith-Schuster was back on the field. So does that signal something to the effect of they would rather have Juju doing the dirty work over the middle of the field and not Travis Kelce during the regular season? I don't know. But it's at least interesting to me where all of his double-digit target games except one came with Juju off the field. So I don't know. I get it. I'm not going there myself.
Yeah, routes were cut last week. Kelsey's route share was the second lowest it's been. The Juju thing I thought maybe hurt Nuke because Nuke's route share also dipped last week to 51%. They're just doing the full rotation. The big thing is we just got to get Justin Watson the hell out of here. Look, Andy Reid's the best coach of all time, but what are we doing with Justin Watson playing so much?
The problem is he does all the behind the scenes shit right. So it's hard for coaches to take him off the field.
He's a good run blocker too, but he does the deep stuff. Panthers side, man, they're going to get Thielen back. We'll get some sort of rotation with Chuba and Brooks. I still fully expect it to be 75-25 out of the gates for Hubbard. But this is the worst possible matchup. He's 6,600. I can't get there. Jake, you got any thoughts on Panthers?
I really don't have anything on the Carolina side. I mean, maybe
zero thoughts.
If you really wanted to stretch things, maybe Carolina keeps this game close enough that Chuba can get there on volume. But, again, it's a really tough matchup. I think you could argue for Chuba and Carolina defense, but there's just no way I'm playing that.
Yeah, I want to play a shit ton of Broncos, and Hilo, you talked to me into Vikings, and I wanted to play Chiefs. They're 3,900. Hunt and Chiefs defense is comfy, very comfy. All right, final 3 games here. Broncos and Raiders. This game's at 4:05, the only 4:05 game this week. Broncos 6-point favorites going into Vegas. Big sports weekend in Vegas. Hilo, you're out there for the race. They You got the Broncos coming in town. Bo Nix, the best quarterback in the NFL, coming in town. Look, I mean, everything's turned up green for Vegas this weekend. Hilo, I'll kick it to you first, man. Brock Bowers' price has come up, but I don't think it's been enough. This is the most expensive he's been all season, but 6,300 on full PPR DraftKings is probably too cheap for what he's been. Jacoby Myers, I want to get your take here. Myers' price has come down. It's just a really tough spot. Back in week 5, that was the first game that Adams had the hamstring injury.
Yeah.
They did not shadow, but he did see a lot of Surtain. Opened up things for Bowers. How do you see it this week?
I'm not going to pretend to try and think I know what they're going to do, because with the Broncos, they can do so many cool things with their defense.
Yeah.
They can completely change up what they did last time these two teams met. And Pat Surtain just gives them so much flexibility. They rank second in the league in blitz rate. So we expect the ball to have to be coming out of the hands of Gardner Minshew fast. With both of these guys, they could be that primary option in Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. The other side of that discussion is how many touchdowns do we expect the Raiders to score this week? The answer is probably maybe 0, maybe 1.
One.
So so where's the upside in either of these guys? I get it. They're probably priced below where they should be if just looking at their weekly range of outcomes in a vacuum. The problem is this game isn't played in a vacuum. This game is played against 50.
Oh, we
might have lost Mark. Yeah, we might have lost Mark. Mark's in a hotel in Vegas.
Staff and
oh, he's back.
Oh,
hi.
He's not back.
Maybe in and out a bit. I think you're back now.
Shit. All right. Yeah, I'm on the shitty hotel Wi-Fi. So apologies.
Wait, I think you're back now though. You're good, Mark.
Yeah,
I think
all right.
Good.
Apologies. Shitty hotel Wi-Fi.
Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah. So
no worries.
The long story is why are we going here if these guys don't really have a path to put the slate out of reach upside?
Yeah.
I get it. They're probably priced below where they should be, but if they're not helping you win a GPP, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So to me, the Raiders just don't matter.
Yeah, Jacoby feels like a cash play more than anything at his price tag, and I really quibble with the upside this week with Surtain on him. Do we need to have the Amir Abdullah discussion, Jake? He's 4,300. They're not going to have Zamir White. They're not going to have Alex Madison. But Abdullah's so old, man. He's been in the league for 10 years. They're going to play some Law Bay. I could see them just boosting up the pass rate. Yeah.
It's tough because it's looking like it'll be a split, and this is already one of the 3-4 least valuable backfields for fantasy purposes in the NFL. I don't think you need to go there, especially because we've already highlighted a lot of really solid values in sort of the 55 to 6K range for running backs. I just don't think you're gaining a lot with that extra 1,200 moving down to a guy like Abdullah. And there isn't much offensive upside here too.
It feels really trappy, and honestly, I would rather play a 1% Javonte Williams at 5,200 with Broncos defense. What if they do go back and they're like, hey, he's our guy. He was running angry again last week. We give him 12, 13 carries against this defense. I'm not thrilled to play Javonte by any means, but 1% tournament play. Do like that with Broncos D. I don't have anything else here on this game. I don't really understand the Sutton ownership. Raiders are playing a ton of too high, limiting opposing outside wide receivers to the second fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game at -7. Jake, talk me into Sutton. You have any thoughts there?
I don't really think I can talk you into Sutton. I mean, the volume's been really good. He's finally realizing his expected fantasy points, 4th in fantasy points, 5th in expected fantasy points among wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. But I mean, like you highlighted, this doesn't really feel like a great spot. I think if I want to get Denver exposure, it's either through a naked Bo Nix or maybe that Javonte Broncos defense stack, but I'm really not excited about either option.
Yeah, Bro Nix, that price has come up a little bit, but he is he's a little interesting. Obviously, you're just playing him with Sutton. He has had some hammer ceiling weeks. I just don't know if I see the Raiders pushing, although he smoked Falcons without them pushing last week. All right, Cardinals and Seahawks. I think this is the second biggest game of the week to kind of get right here. This is a pick'em. Totals 47.5 in Seattle. Cardinals coming out of their bye. I think Geno's probably just a little too cheap, Jake. He projects pretty well at 5,700. I think he and A-Rich will probably be the two highest owned quarterbacks on this slate. Just we're looking for value. Quarterback is kind of tricky this week. I think a lot of people are going to be looking for under 6K guys. What's your read here on Seattle, Metcalf, JSN?
Yeah, this is an interesting spot. I mean, Geno's going to be really popular, and I think the default Geno build is pretty easily going to be JSN plus Metcalf. JSN is projecting for a bit more ownership than Metcalf, and I do think I like Metcalf a bit more, if only because the deep receiving role for him is so valuable. Before he got hurt, he had accounted for 75% of Seattle's deep receiving yardage, which is absolutely insane. I think I have a bit more interest in the Arizona side of this game, but I will say, Graham, that I think this is a game that you either want to fully game stack or largely stay away from. And I'm really curious what Hilo thinks whenever he manages to get back in here. But I see like a massive range of outcomes here. Both of these offenses haven't really, they've sort of bounced all over the place in terms of, their team tendencies and stuff. So when you see a game that, like I said, I think has a very large range of outcomes, it could play really slow, it could play really fast. It kind of makes me lean toward just, game stacking. And I think I prefer, the Kyler Murray side of things, because this was an insane stat. He scored over 4x his current DraftKings salary in 33% of his career games with a total over 46. You might think small sample. No, that's 60 total games. So 20 out of 60 of those games, he's gone over 4x his current DraftKings salary. Also a really strong schematic matchup for Marvin Harrison. But yeah, it's just a lot of words for me to basically say, like, I really like game stacks here. I don't know how much I like the one-off options.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I have not played a ton of Kyler this season outside of like that 1 week against the Rams back in week 2. And I really don't have much interest in any quarterback priced higher than him. I really like Kyler, and I love him with Marv. This is an awesome spot with Marv for Marv Harrison. Seahawks have been bumping their man coverage rate back up now that Reek Woolen's back 50% in the last 2 games. Marv Harrison has a 34% target share against man coverage, 18% against zone, just huge splits this season. So if they stick with their 50% man coverage, Marv has a legitimate ceiling this week where I don't think he's really had much of one all year. I really like this setup for him, and I'm with you, Jake. I think the way to play this game is certainly game stacking it. So you'd play Kyler with Marv, bring it back with probably Metcalf or Walker. Hilo, I'll kick it to you first, man. Are you you good? You got the Wi-Fi here? Are you frozen? You back? Up. I think we lost Mark again here.
Only other thing I wanted to add on the Arizona side is that Kyler Murray, and this is a bit underrated here, I think he's played 3 of the 10 best quarterback games that we've seen all season. He's looked incredible in terms of individual performances. I know Hilo has sort of lamented the Drew Petzig passing concepts, and there isn't much volume, but I think in a game like this, we could certainly see pace get pushed. I mean, Kyler could just have an absolute legacy game. So I'm really interested, considering the ownership just isn't coming in super heavy. I mean, it seems like everyone wants to play the Seattle side, and I'm not necessarily sure that's right. I want a little Geno exposure, but nothing crazy. I'm a lot more excited about Kyler.
Yeah, Ant at 5,600 is just, Jake, it's like it's be off brand if we didn't just tout the shit out of Ant at 5,600. We have to do that. But I think Kyler's probably my second favorite play at quarterback on this slate. We need to talk Walker. Hey, Mark, you're back.
We are hot spotting now, so
there we go. All right. We only have one game left here. We'll get you out of here to the Vegas festivities tonight. But I got to ask you about this game. I wanted to get your thoughts on Cardinals side specifically with Kyler, Marv, Trey McBride. How do you see this game playing out this week?
So this game to me has some of the widest range of outcomes on the slate. The reason being is when we look at how a game plays out, how an NFL game plays out, I like to describe it as 3 main pieces. There's the game planning phase, I call it, where it's we come in with a game plan of how we're going to attack the known tendencies of our opponent. That lasts anywhere from a quarter to a quarter and a half, typically in an NFL game. After that is like what I call the adjustment phase. That is where the coaches are making adjustments. They're seeing what has worked, what hasn't worked, and they're game planning for now what we have seen in this like new information that we've got. After that is what I call the oh shit phase. It's like all bets are off. We have to go win this football game. Nothing else matters. So that's where we see teams that are typically run heavy, go pass heavy. We see all these different aspects come into it. What we're looking at with this game, because both of these teams are tied atop the NFC West, because all 4 teams in the NFC West are within a half of a game, and because this is a very important divisional matchup, this is almost like a must-win game for each of these teams. So there is a path to these 2 teams hitting the oh shit phase much earlier than in other spots, and that would be a big boost to the game environment. The other side of that story is both of these teams could play not to lose this game. And then we could see the oh shit phase not happen until like the final drive or the final 2 possessions. So to me, this game has a really, really wide range of outcomes. And when I'm looking at like how to attack that, one thing that comes into play is ownership. We don't expect a ton here outside of some JSN. And 2 is I really want to be stacking it up and playing to the high end in that range of outcomes, or I want to be completely staying away. And the known tendencies of the Cardinals is to kind of take a more reserved approach on their own to begin with. So that could aid in the downside there. So to me, like I want to stack it up, Geno plus 2 of his pass catchers, or Geno plus Kenneth Walker and 1 of his pass catchers, bring it back with a Cardinal, or I just kind of like want to stay away. It's kind of how I'm seeing this spot.
This screams to me like a 3 or 4 piece stack type of game. I saw the Niners Seahawks game last week as a similar type of game and stacked it up and lost because I didn't play Winston. But yeah, I think this is a kind of similar setup with Geno stacks. Like if you're playing Geno, just get some pieces here. Jake, you see any spots to get weird in this game?
Yeah, I think it's focusing a bit more on the Arizona side. Seattle's definitely going to be a lot chalkier. I think we cover that. Hilo, I know you're always a bit down on the Arizona passing attack, but I do think Kyler could get pushed here, and we've just seen some awesome games from Kyler, even if the pass game concepts haven't been helping him out.
Yeah, Seattle has allowed I've had the stat, I think it's 19 or more fantasy points in basically 6 of their last 7 games to quarterbacks. I think Kyler's got a really solid floor and a pretty high ceiling this week. All right, we'll get out of here with 49ers and Packers. Obviously, this game just got nuked with Brock Purdy being out. The total is still 46.5. The spread is 3. I'm going to imagine that's going to come up here. In favor of the Packers, I'll probably see the total in the maybe low 40s. All right, we'll start here. Is Brandon Allen in play at 4K? Hilo, I'll toss it to you. Is he in play? For
Not to me.
Yeah.
Not to me, because the Packers defense, like if we had Joe Barry as the defensive coordinator of the Packers, maybe, because it's a static picture that they can coach him through. The problem with the Packers defense, or playing the Packers defense this year, is they're so dynamic. They're doing like all different things to confuse a quarterback pre-snap and post-snap, with coverages, with alignments, with what their linebackers are doing pre-snap. And all of that is going to give an inexperienced quarterback fits. So in the current state of these 2 teams, probably not for me.
Yeah, we're about to find out how much of a system quarterback Purdy is, because Brandon Allen's short week, it legitimately seemed like Purdy was like trying to gut through it. Then Thursday practice, like could not throw. So this isn't a type of situation where Brandon Allen's been like prepped to be the starter all week. Like they're kind of throwing him in. No Jari Alexander on the Packers side does definitely boost the matchup for Juwan Jennings, but man, without Purdy, it just, I don't know if I could really get there. Jake, you got any thoughts here? Obviously, the big one for Niners is Trent Williams' status. If Trent Williams is out, I'm kind of like full fading Niners, I think. He's just such a catalyst for this offense. He did not practice last week and played. He didn't practice this week, so he's legitimately questionable. But like 8,500 McCaffrey with Brandon Allen under center. When we've got Achane, we've got Mixon. I know McCaffrey's the man. The volume's been amazing, Jake. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really hard for me to click any of these San Francisco options, like you said, especially if Trent Williams sits. I think if Trent Williams goes, I'll have very minor interest in Brandon Allen as in like in a 150 set, he might make his way onto 3, 4, 5% of my teams and no more than that. I think, he gives you such great salary savings, and we know there's great offensive upside here. So, that would be the argument for Brandon Allen. The argument against him is that he's probably terrible. So that's the tricky part. But it's a Kyle Shanahan system, and they've that's generally boosted the fantasy outputs of the quarterbacks that we've seen play for the 49ers. So yeah, I mean, it's really tough. I was pretty excited about this game, and now that Purdy's been ruled out, I mean, it's lost a lot of its luster.
Yeah, I wanted to play some Purdy with Jennings and bring it back with Jaden Reed. Just such a good on-paper matchup for Reed. Niners just getting crushed through the slot, but pretty much just nukes this game. I like Josh Jacobs with Packers defense a little bit now. Say, hey, Brandon Allen's probably not very good. They could just lean on Jacobs in the run game, just kind of sweat this game out. Mark, what do you see here for this game?
Yeah, I'm kind of in line. I had some interest with Brock Purdy expected to play. Now that he's not, especially with Trent Williams, they're expecting to get George Kittle back. That helps the run for CMC, but losing Trent Williams is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I already liked the way that the slate was shaping up to not pay up at running back, so that kind of just cemented it for me. And nothing really to add on any of the pass catchers. You guys crushed it there.
I will say on Jacobs, he set season highs in snap share, target share, and fantasy points in week 11. Still, though, I mean, we really haven't seen much of a ceiling. Even in Packers wins, he's only gone 4x his current DraftKings salary once. So, yeah, I'm not super excited about Jacobs. I mean, especially if he's going to push for 12, 15% ownership, I think I'd probably take my foot off there. But there's certainly an argument for him, especially if the Packers roll here.
Yeah, I haven't made my mind up on Jacobs here, but I think he definitely looks like a pretty decent value based on the role. I think 79% snap rate last week, season high, so really good. I think that's going to do it here, boys. Great job breaking down the slate. Hilo is going to get out of here and go have some fun in Vegas watching the race this weekend. Jake and Ryan will be live in about 25 minutes breaking down the Battle Royale slate on the Drafter Party. Make sure you're hanging out, sticking around on the channel, listening to Jake and Ryan. Tomorrow, Scott and Neil will be live as always for Outside the Box in the middle of the afternoon. Get the best DFS intel from Scott then, and on Sunday morning, he's with John Proctor for the Sunday update for our subscribers. You guys can always get that link in the Discord channel on Sunday mornings. Guys, great show. For Hilo, for Jake, I'm Graham. Good luck in week 12. We will see you guys at the top of the leaderboards.
What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.